With Edge of Fate gaining nothing but criticisms and causing a ton of walkbacks from Bungie and also forcing reworks of the game, Renegades is now the latest expansion to come to Destiny 2. With the ability of utilizing the Star Wars IP, will this game actually still stay alive when Bungie is focusing on Marathon, or is the lightsaber going to be the weapon used to kill the long-standing franchise? Hello guys, my name is Toxic, and this is Hazard Reviews. Now, as usual, I will start off with the story, so there will be some spoilers coming up if you haven't played through the main questline yet. The storyline itself is pretty much the Destiny version of the first Star Wars film, but obviously with changes to make it more interactive and based closer to what it can be done with the Guardians, and only using some story elements that have been highlighted in the past to help bring in more depth into the storyline instead of just doing a straight ripoff. Now, the story itself is fairly short. It only takes maybe 5 or 6 hours to really go through the main story, and it was reasonably paced, albeit being pretty much a lot of the main action set pieces being the clone of Star Wars, and it's kind of the type of circumstance where it just feels like they copied the homework but also made only a few changes just so it doesn't look like it's the same thing. Now, that doesn't mean I don't have some praise for this. I do like the new Cabal Imperium being the main enemy faction, and then bringing in the new Dredgen to help bring more of the Drifter's backstory into light, especially since we haven't really gotten that much, and also seeing another Dredgen interacting with him does make it a little bit more interesting as we do get a better understanding of what he was seen as back before becoming the Drifter himself. On top of that, having Honora as a new ally does make it easier for them to then introduce new ally factions that have been slightly brought up in the past, but haven't actually been really highlighted up until recently. Especially since, if you remember, all the way back in Forsaken during the season of the Drifter, you actually do have to deal with either siding with the Drifter or siding with Honor when it came to the Vanguard's decision to keep him around the tower. As much as I will praise the fact that they actually made it unique to Destiny 2, there is still the issue that it does really follow a lot of the major plot lines within the Star Wars film, to the point where you can kind of do a bit of a prediction, especially if you are a huge Star Wars fan, in regarding, okay, what's going to happen next? Like, oh, we're just going to be blowing up the massive weapon that was used on this location to kill multiple different Guardians? Man, where have I seen that one before? Now, of course, they do still try and keep it primarily with Destiny 2 in mind, so it's not a huge issue, but again, the predictability of the plot line, if you are a Star Wars fan, kind of can rub people the wrong way. It was sort of a letdown, but again, I'm not going to be really that marred by it, especially since we still got a really good storyline out of it, and we also got more in-depth in terms of seeing how Drifter's position is within the entire Destiny universe, and how his, existence also had an impact in regards to who we become allies with and who became our enemies. So the fact is that those two circumstances coming together does make it a little bit of a more interesting situation versus just, oh yeah, we just copied everything from Star Wars and then just went off from there. Moving towards the actual activities and the mechanics connected to them, we're going to be focusing down on the main aspects of it: the Syndicates and the Lawless Frontier. Now, in the simplest of terms, the Lawless Frontier is essentially just a revamp and a refresh of the Nether activity from last year during this season of Heresy. Now, instead of going into the Dreadnought, you actually have 3 different locations that you can go to: Mars, Venus, and Europa, each planet having their own different unique location, design, atmosphere, and on top of that, depending on which you would choose, different layouts for enemies, missions, and other things of that sort. Now, the basic activities themselves can be either one of 3 things. They could be either a smuggle mission, sabotage mission, or a bounty hunt mission. And again, those all have different layouts for them, but all share the same simple circumstance of having 3 different levels of difficulty, increasing the level each time you finish up an activity. Now, the activities themselves for those specific locations do change depending on what the day is, and they can always be random, unless you're selecting onto a contested location. Now, contested locations are different in terms of allowing PvP, meaning that you can have someone come in as an invader to go and disrupt the team from being able to complete the mission. Now, there are limited lives in this version as well, so those invasions will have a costly effect if you're not able to take care of that invader, especially if they time it perfectly to where you're at the last part of it, where the enemy density is the highest, as well as the difficulty is maxed out to being 50 levels above your own power level. Now, outside of the actual objectives that you have within the maps, you are also able to explore. They are somewhat open world, so they'll have little secrets hidden around, they'll have collectibles, and they'll also have different items that you are able to get that will give you either resources, gear, or credits that can be used over at the Tharsis Outpost. Now, other than just the actual Lawless Frontiers and the other story stuff, the Tharsis Outpost does also have the hotbed for the Syndicates. Essentially, the easiest way to explain it is that it's a better version of the faction rallies that we had back when, faction rallies were a thing, and each faction, or in this case Syndicate, has an actual benefit for you to align with them. The higher level of the Syndicate that you have, the better access to gear as well as perks that you would be able to utilize, which are it's resupplying, healing, or offensive kill streaks like a massive boulder, or dropping other weapons that you would be able to utilize. Now, there's two major ways of actually doing the, affiliations with the Syndicates and increasing the rep with them. The first one is to align with them and do the priority contracts, as well as doing some of the repeatables that you have throughout the Lawless Frontier. And the second way is actually from the scavenging. You would be able to donate or process some of the ingots that you have, and that will allow you to not only get some extra gear, but also will be able to increase the level of the affiliation with that syndicate as well. Now, the most that you would want to get up to is level 5, and that will fully unlock everything for each one. However, the more contracts that you do, the better rewards that you will get in return, especially after the reset hits. I really like this system, and it's primarily because it gives you the option to, one, have this positive feedback loop, and also gives you another reason to play the Lawless Frontier, which again will give you more gear. And the more you do it, the higher level tiers that you get, and obviously your power level will also increase as well. It is actually really good to go through it and try it out yourself. You can either do it on your own or matchmake with other people, and you would be able to still have an interesting time going through each of the areas. I honestly think that this activity itself and the mechanics of the Syndicates really are possibly one of the better parts of this actual expansion, because as much as I enjoyed the story, I really enjoyed the Lawless Frontier a lot more in comparison, just because it's, even though it is kind of a rehash of what we had beforehand, it feels completely different, and it actually feels more engaging than just walking around in a single area and just going to another section afterwards. You actually have a unique map to go and explore, and also little puzzles that you would be able to do that will give you some more stuff along the way. Now, lastly, the season provides us with a new dungeon called Equilibrium, which obviously follows the same routine as the 3 separate encounters, 1 mechanic encounter, and 2 boss encounters, and also utilizing the same form of the mechanic throughout, kind of like your regular dungeon. However, the way that everything is kind of set up actually is a little bit more different in terms of actually not only utilizing it, but also the transversal itself. Now, the main mechanic of Gathering Shadows is cool because the more you go into the dungeon, the more function it has, both in the transition areas and also during the main encounters. It feels like you are getting stronger from the beginning all the way to the final encounter, where it doesn't feel like it's just, oh, you're just creatively utilizing other systems. It's, you are literally gaining more abilities with the Shadows mechanic that it actually feels like you are working your way up to the top, and not just, hey, here's the mechanic and these are the different ways of utilizing it. And on top of that, The transitions between the encounters are also really cool, going from one ship to another and even jumping between two separate locations on the same ship while having to exit outside does make the traversal within this dungeon significantly better than a lot of the other ones, especially since many of the ones that we have so far haven't really been that extreme in their traversal. Maybe a few here and there may have the same level, but the expansion within the actual areas, meaning that it's not just a straight line, but more of a traversal area itself, does lead to credence that this is a big ship that we're going through, not just a single path lane and just a few side things here and there. Now, because of the actual size of the traversal areas, it does allow them to be able to work within the means of making sure that it does feel like there's a reason for it to be big and not just, oh, it's big. And you can actually see a bit of that by doing the quest that allows you to do the attunement for the gear. Now, I can definitely say that this is one of the better dungeons, both in the aesthetics of the dungeon itself and also the mechanics that are being used within the dungeon, especially when they apply to the final boss fight and everything else that you get to deal with beforehand. Now, that being said, my main problem is nothing with the dungeon itself, just the actual tier system. Because again, it's still going based off of what we had back in Desert Perpetual with the tier system, meaning that if you already are at the highest power level you are, and then you want to get tier 5 gear, you have to artificially make it harder for yourself. It's not just given to you when you complete it, or something that has to be done in Master Mode or something. Again, I've gone over this before, so I'm not really going to hash it out here, because again, it's pretty much the same thing as I said previously. The only difference is that it's being applied in a dungeon rather than in a raid. So if you haven't seen that, you can go check that out. It is its own video as well. But yeah, I mean, that's always like the only issue that I have with it. But again, in the end, like, the endgame stuff has always been what I've enjoyed the most. There's never really been anything that I've had a real big issue with. I think maybe Brood of Nightmares being super easy, but even then, like, it still was a decent time there. But this is definitely a level above the regular expectation, especially, so it is worth going through, even if you aren't someone who normally goes through the dungeons and all that. Now I think it's time to actually address the main reason for the late form of this video. Technically, if I really wanted to, I could have had this out much earlier, but again, I did kind of want to stick with the same thing that I had for Edge of Fate, where it was going to be both the actual main expansion and then the update. Although, that being said, with how everything kind of happened, a lot of things obviously changed from when I anticipated this from going out to now. First off being the fact that we had a 2-month delay, likely because they wanted to get some additional stuff done, and also coincidentally Marathon was coming out as well. And then the more pertinent part is the final fate of Destiny 2. Now, I will go over that in a different video and also my thoughts about it, but with the changes from Bungie's, I thought, you know, it's better to have it on its own now, just because we're not going to have that sort of circumstance. And also, it looks like that the final update that we're getting is going to have a lot of stuff in it where a separate video would be necessary. Now, with this particular expansion, the Renegades, being heavily inspired by Star Wars, I was very happy, especially since you're able to get an exotic lightsaber, which you can change multiple facets, especially the blade color and also the hilt as well, if you do buy those options within the Eververse. Now, if you didn't like Star Wars or really don't care for it, this still has a lot of uniqueness to the story and also activities that are pretty fun, even if you really don't consider anything about Star Wars itself, and it's definitely worth going through, especially since this is a huge step up from Edge of Fate, both by story, activity, and, well, pretty much on every facet by a long shot. Overall, I actually give this expansion an 8 out of 10, with, again, my main issues being the main plot points from being taken from Star Wars, and also the endgame tiered system. But the activities, dungeon, and also the aesthetics make you completely disregard any of those issues that you have when it comes to the bigger picture. Now that you heard the review, what are your thoughts about it? Did you like the expansion, or did you not even touch it because Edge of Fate was just that terrible and you were expecting that this game was going to die within a year? Let me know in the comments down below. Now, hopefully you guys have kind of noticed I have been trying a new way of doing the reviews, so let me know what you think about the new format, especially since I'm not really providing much info in terms of the storyline, just to kind of condense the videos down a little bit. Now, if you are curious about the actual Let's Play, you can check that in the description down below. Thank you guys for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed it. Until next time, I'll see you guys in the next review. Take care.